Hey guys and girls, Birchy here with another whiteboard session. I'm going to do a discussion today about how to buy properties when the bank says no, right? So I might have covered this topic before in a whiteboard discussion, but I'll do it again because this is one of the coolest things that people don't, look at or know, or it's hidden, it's a good gem out there, right? So who this might be good for is someone that owns a property. They've accumulated 10 properties and they can't buy any more and they want to get from 10 to 20 and they're stuck. It might be good for someone that is retired, right? And they can't get a loan. It might be good for someone that's on 100 grand income, got 10 properties and has 10 kids now, and there's no chance of you getting a loan from the bank, right? But you've already got the properties, already got some loans. So this here, what I'm going to talk about is a thing called property substitution and security swap. So what it means is, let's say, for instance, we hop in the DeLorean and go back to the future. Some of you guys may not know what a DeLorean is. It's a car that goes in the movie Back to the Future. Me just having to explain what a DeLorean is makes me feel old. But anyway, let's assume, we go back 10 years ago and you bought a property for, $200,000 and now it's worth $800,000, right? You might have initially had a loan at $160,000 on it, but for some reason you've pulled out equity and you've got a loan at $300K on it, right? So most people would sit there and say, hey, I'm going to sell my property for $1 million. $1 million. I'll pay back the $300,000 and then I'll have $700,000 left that I can go and do something else with. Now, that's cool, but you've still got that $300,000. So most people think you just pay the loan off and then poof, all the money goes back to money heaven where it created. However, that's not what you do in this situation. So if you've got $300,000 loan there, you could come in with another property at say $200,000 and another one at $200,000. So just like you've done here when you got the 200 grand property back in the day, you could technically buy, we'll move our screen back. Get a bit excited with this whiteboard sometimes. So you go back and buy 2 new properties for $200,000 a piece. You would attach that. This is the only time I'd ever cross-securitize a property. You could attach those to there, and that would become the loan for them. So you could take out the existing property, and then you'd replace it with the 2 new properties over here. That would swap over there. Since you've had a property for 200, it's gone to $1 million. If you sell it off, you'll end up with 700 grand in your pocket. But instead of that, you're keeping the loan open. You're attaching 2 new properties to that. So let's break it down into a different little scenario as well. So I'm just make the screen a little bit smaller. So there's a lot of people out there that bought properties in 2020. The properties I buy are 200 grand, 300 grand. That's why I'm using these examples. And they've gone from 200 grand to 700 grand, right? That's why I use that example. But there's a lot of people that didn't use B.Invested and didn't get the chance to buy these properties. And they might have bought something for $500,000. Don't know why it does that for. But anyway, someone bought a property in 2020 for 500 grand. Let's assume that they owe 400K on it. And now it's worth $1 million. What does your position look like, right? What can you swap out? How does it look like? What will be the process of wanting to make this scenario happen, right? So let's assume we go back over here. And you've got 10 properties here and you wanted to. Just remembering there's no financial advice here. I'm not your financial advisor. Always, when you're selling a property, always remember, I've never had someone come to me here at B.Invested and say, I'm so happy I bought a property in 2010 and I bought it for 200 and I sold it in 2014 for 400. I just made 200 grand. They're happy on the day, but when they come back in the future, they're like, shit, the thing's now worth 800 grand. I wish I didn't sell it. So I'm not a big fan of selling, but if you are going to sell and do this, you want to make sure that you want to take 1 step back and you're going to take 2 steps forward and get to where you want to be. And what would this look like? So most people would think about this as an aftershot. and it wouldn't be something that they'd be thinking of when they're putting their property up for sale or whatnot. So for me, the process would be is that I would identify if I'm going to sell this property for $1 million and identify that there's a 300K loan. I can utilize that to buy 2 more properties, 1 and 2. Property 1 looks like a half a property there, number 1 and number 2. But also remember, you still got the 700,000 here, right? So if you had 700K, right, and you guys follow my social media and you see the Instagram posts and all that, we could buy maybe a block of units cash, right, that brings in, say, $80,000 a year. So if you're sitting here and you're like, hey, I can't really service that well, right? I don't have enough servicing at the moment, something's wrong. And you have a property that's done this sort of task. You could sell that property, in theory. You could get the 300 grand, replace it with 2 more. So your position's gone from 10 properties minus 1 is back to 9. Well, and then plus 2 is 11 properties, right? So you're still up 1 property from doing that. But then if you have, just going to make it a bit smaller. I'm going to just reshuffle this here. This whiteboard's pretty new for me, but it's a cool thing. Shout out to Mark, who's from ViewSonic, who helped us obtain these things. Bit of a shout out to you, Mark. He said he didn't like my old whiteboard, so he helped me get these from his work. So if you can't service, how much are you falling short by servicing? If this property is renting for, I don't know, $500 a week, $800 a week, right? That could be 25K a year, 40K a year in rent that you've got coming through in the initial property that you have. If you can go to the second option by selling off that property, keeps going like this. Sell it off, buy 2 more. They're renting for, say, $400, $400. So now you're getting $800 a week there. That's $40,000 a year. $40,000 a year. So if you replace the initial cash flow of what you've gotten rid of, but you've got this $1 million that's left over, the 700,000 that's left over, you buy another block of units cash and you get 80 grand a year. Now your cash flow has really taken an acceleration, right? Because you're at a figure of 120,000, right? So if you've bought a property in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years, and you feel like you're stuck, right? Well, you could be, right? But how do you overcome that? So let's go back to the start. Bought a property for 200, it's worth $1 million, just made up that number. It could be a 400 grand property that's now worth $1 million. It's got a 300 grand loan, 700 grand cash left over. Don't close the loan off. You keep the loan open. You sell the property, 300 grand, you attach 2 new properties to it. Those 2 new properties, your initial rent was 25 or 40 grand a year, somewhere in that rent range. Your 2 new properties that you buy, $400 a week. That's $800 a week. That's 40,000 a year. You take the 700 grand that's left over as cash. You go buy a block of units. The rent's for 80,000 a year. You add the 40 grand, the 80K. Now you had 120 grand a year. Your initial income was 20 grand a year. Your new income's 120 grand a year. You're now 80,000 a year better off. Now you go back to the bank, right? And you say, hey, I know last time you knocked me back because I had 10 properties in this debt or whatever, but I've sold off 1 property. So I went back from 10 minus 1 to 9, added 2 new ones and I got to 11. Then I added a block of units here, which is, let's say, 5 units here. Oops, I'll just make that look a bit cleaner as a 5. So I've added 5 units. So my net figure is that I've now got 16 rentals or 12 properties in my portfolio. My cash flow is now 80,000 a year better off, Mr. Bank. I own 1 block of units cash outright, no debt. could be in a trust and you could service from that trust. What can you do for me, bank? Right? And the bank will sit there and be like, oh, wow, your income's increased. Your asset position is very strong. It appears to me you might be able to service for another 200 grand. You might be able to service for another 500 grand. You might be able to service for another $1 million because we've now added more cash flow coming into your portfolio. And in that instance, you could then take that property that you bought for 700, the block of units, get a loan on it, release 5, 6, 700 grand worth of cash, and then go and buy the next 2 or 3 properties. So you might be stuck. A lot of people just go, oh, I'm stuck. The bank told me no, I can't do anything, and then do nothing for the next 10 years, right? Or the next 5 years, and then Perth will go up, and Brisbane will go up, and Cairns will go up, and Townsville will go up, and Sydney will go up, and all those locations that you're just sitting by and you're watching other people make money, and you're not sitting at the table participating and actually making money as well. There is ways for you not to butcher up your portfolio. If you had 10, you lose 1, you get 2, you get another 1, you're going to be in a much better position. And it does sometimes, the trade-off is a part of it. So if you were to do this, you're literally replacing the engine in your car whilst you're driving down the road. So there's lots of moving parts. If it was me and I had the house here that I'm selling, the first thing that I would do is I would list that property. And when a buyer comes to buy the property, I would ask for a 12-week settlement. Instead of having a 6-week settlement, I would ask for a 12-week settlement. The reason being is that it gives me an extra 6 weeks to find the new properties, because on the day of settlement, you need to make sure these 2 properties that you're buying all have to settle at the same time, right? So in a normal transaction, you'd have yourself, your bank, your lawyer. So 3 people, the seller, their bank, and their lawyer. So there's 6 people turning up to a settlement, right? But in this scenario, if we're buying 2 new properties here, we've got your property selling, your bank selling, your lawyer. Then you've got the 2 new properties that you're purchasing, the bank and the lawyer, right? So there's 9 people just there. You've got the sellers of these 2 properties and the buyers of these 2 properties. You've got 18 people coming to the table at the transaction at the same time. It is a complex situation. You need to make sure that your lawyer is lined up and experienced in doing this. You need to make sure that your broker is experienced to be able to do this. Your broker doesn't get paid for doing this, so they're not going to advise you to do this. Your bank is not getting paid to do this, so they're not going to advise you to do this. No one's going to help you. You have to do it yourself, because there's policies in the back of the bank that will allow you to take the security out. It's called a substitute of security, a security swap. There's different names that it goes from bank to bank. But all we're doing is we're replacing the security. And as long as the bank has the same loan terms that initially is here, let's say it's the $300,000, as long as these new properties that are coming in are worth more than 80% of the value of it, then the bank will allow you to keep that loan open with those new properties as a security for it. The new properties, when you're buying them, you need to make sure that the cooling off periods, the finance clause, the due diligence clause, all the clauses expire at the same time. You want to make sure that the clauses have provisions in it to let you out, because if you buy these 2 properties, they both cool off, so you're committed to them, you can't pull out, and something happens and the loan is not set up correctly, or this seller pulls out and this one wants to go ahead, right? Then the loan is not valid anymore. So you must have those 2 properties settled at the same minute, the same time, the same everything. I've had this up to about 8 properties settling in a group at a time. I was talking to one of my clients yesterday who had a scenario like this, and she sold off 1 unit in Melbourne. She had $500,000 loan. She attached 4 properties to that property. We paid $90,000 for a house in regional Queensland. She's going to sell it now for $300,000. We bought a unit in coastal region Queensland, 2-bedder, for $100,000, now worth about $300,000. And we bought a duplex in North Queensland for about $250,000, which is now worth about $550,000. And there was a unit in Gladstone or something we bought for like $100,000. Now it's worth probably $300,000. So that loan has 4 properties attached to it. I told her yesterday, and I instructed her to go to the bank and begin to value all those properties and pull 2 properties out of that property pool, right? So she's got now 2 properties unencumbered over here that she can then take off and, get loans against or go sell or whatever the case may be. So let me get this clear. At Zinger Finance, my finance company, out of probably like billions of dollars loans originated. Let's say out of just 1,000 loans, you might see not one property cross-collateralized. Maybe out of 5,000 deals that we do, you might see one property cross-collateralized. There'd probably only be less than 5 properties that we've ever cross-collateralized when originating a loan for a specific purpose. It does never happen. And I always say you never cross-collateralize a loan. But in this scenario, you have the loan anyway. May as well load it up with as many assets as you can because you've already got that debt, right? So that's the only time I would ever suggest to cross-collateralize. It's a good thing if you're doing it like that, and it helps you get back on the road to build the portfolio. So you could be 70 years old, you bought the property in 2007 at 200 grand, and now it's 20 years later almost. You're 60 and now you're 80, or if you're 80, you're probably not wanting to buy more property, but if you're 50 and now you're 70, and you've done this and you're like, shit, I want to buy more properties, I like my debt, all that, but the bank will say no to me because I can't get a loan. Well, you don't have to go back to the bank and apply for the loan. You're just doing a substitute of security so you can keep that loan and keep expanding your portfolio whilst you don't have the ability to go and acquire new debt. So it's not taking up any more debt. You cannot change the type of property. If you bought a commercial property, it must be commercial. If you bought a house, it must be a house. If you bought a house and you're selling a house and you want to go buy a block of units and attach to that loan, you can't do it because it would fall as a commercial sort of loan by structure. So it's very delicate. Yeah, as I said, we're changing the engine of the car while you're driving down the road. But there's ways, it's not just by luck that people wake up and go, hey, I've got fucking 20 properties or 30 properties or 50 properties, right? There's strategies behind that. If you need help on working out your strategy, reach out to us, 1300 367 925. Hit us up at admin@binvested.com.au. And that's what we do to get these people to their large portfolios. There's 172 people in this country with 20 or more properties. I'd know at least 150 of them I could pick up the phone and call them right now because we created them here at B.Invested. That's what we do. That's what we specialize in. Look forward to helping you get to that number. Catch up soon. Have a great day.